Okay, so I've just been really researching Charles W. Carter here, who did a photo that's almost exactly like the Library of Congress that he copied. The only difference is really the eyes are a little bit farther apart, which then his photograph perfectly matches the painting. His descendants that is just typed out, and so they explain that he did help preserve Marcena Cannon's works, his daguerreotypes. I mean, from journal entries I've read of Wilfred Woodruff that I've talked about many times before. It was on the East Coast, though, and then Lucian Foster, who ended up straying. So he didn't follow Brigham Young. He didn't come to Utah. Lucian Foster did not come to Utah. But some of his photography did end up there, if that makes sense. He himself did not end up in Utah, but obviously people paid him $2-3 and got a daguerreotype done and got this nice, Moroccan case, and it ended up in Utah. And so he would copy them, photocopy them to try to preserve them because they would oxidize and go bad. Obviously, when you're traveling like this, it's probably hard to keep that nice, expensive daguerreotype looking okay. It's people did their best, but they had a lot of extenuating circumstances, and Foster didn't end up there. But he does state, the descendants do state, oh, we've preserved his work, because even his own work got like lost, and including, they did try to do their best to preserve, including the controversial photograph of Joseph Smith. So even though they put it in parentheses, they aren't sounding too confident that they think it's a photograph of Joseph Smith. Even the Library of Congress, it perfectly matches this, except the only difference is that this is the eyes are a little bit closer together. But it matches the painting. And so the Library of Congress states specifically, they've concluded this is a photograph of the painting or drawing that perfectly matches this, which the Joseph Smith paper states that very confidently it's done by David Rogers. And of course, you got the scholarly article, really tries to conclude talking about the ring is on the, he's like, well, the ring is on the right hand, but Joseph Smith III states it was on the left hand, so the only way for him to be right is if this was not from life. It just suddenly jumps to that, even though he himself quotes Junius F. Wells, who states he met with Emma in 1875. She died in 1879. Junius F. Wells talked to her and heard this whole story about how this painting, he's talking about this painting, was done from life, in person, and that Rogers, he was depressed, and he's just trying to get him to look happier, get happier expression, and then his conclusion was that he looks younger, like a silly boy, is Joseph Smith's words, and it's a pretty good likeness, and they even state it's the only forward-facing painting, but it's not that good. Well, that was not very good. It was nevertheless the only one. And so in 1885, if Emma's saying that, she was probably saying that when Joseph Smith III was a little kid. And so this whole letter is basically saying, I don't like your painting. I like mine better. In 1910, he did start to go blind. He might have been going blind at this point. Okay, that's sort of what I'm concluding, because I've seen a lot of his descendants quote grand niece of, Joseph Smith III saying that she's sitting there talking to him as he's going blind right before he dies, because he doesn't live much longer after 1810. And so he's saying that has this painting, that he's sustaining the characteristic likeness of his father. In no way does that mean that it's a brand new painting. He thinks it was painted in his father's life, and he thinks a daguerreotype, separate item, was done around the same time, taken the same year, I think, but I don't know, by the artist Lucian Foster. But Lucian Foster wasn't there in 1843, and it really was painted September 1842. But Joseph Smith III was just turned 10 November 1842 because he was born in November 1832. And so he's a little kid, but he knows what's going on because he gets his own daguerreotype and photos taken of him around that age. We have them. I've seen them. And he thinks it was Lucy and Foster who was on Joseph Smith's presidential campaign committee. Yeah, his studio didn't open up, and he did travel after he got assigned to work on the presidential committee, but he brought his camera with him. He didn't leave that in New York. He didn't have an official studio till later. But like me, I have my camera. I'm practicing. I've worked in a studio as a photographer, but I haven't been my own independent professional photographer. I've just on my own I take photos of people. Obviously, he was able to do that. So there is provenance for this picture. And I think that's why they are so confident in stating this by David Rogers. And Carl just went off on his own theory, and I've explained that, because even in this picture, you can see the ring. It's very faint, but you see that ring is on the right hand. Like, it's in all of Maudsley's work. Some of them, it's really that bright ring right here. You can just barely see the outline of that ring. But this wasn't based on a daguerreotype. This was from life. And so McCarl just had some source from 1920 stating, oh no, this is done by Majors. Like one source, but you've got a ton of people stating in 1885, like people are still alive that knew Joseph Smith. Wilford Woodruff is still alive. He directly was best BFFs, apostle, all that. And so, I just have a lot more respect as I go along, obviously. And I'm like, why don't I just analyze this a little bit more? And so as I've just looked at that, I'll be changing my website soon. But you do see the eyebrow. It has a little spot where it gets a little bit thin, and then it stays thick. The eyebrow hairs meet almost right all the way down. It's so thick, it almost meets all the way down to the crease in his eyelid. And you see the same thing here. It's almost meeting up the crease of his eyelid, and then it just keeps going straight down. Like there's this line going like that. There's this line going like that. And it just about meets with his temple, and it's still thick. But fine hair, so it might be hard to pick up on the death mask. It was. But what's interesting is on his left eyebrow, it kind of comes up a little bit. You got a little bit of a swoop up going there. And this was actually taken, like you can see how this isn't, you see a lot more dark things popping out here because this was taken with my cell phone. But you sort of see a little bit more of the eyebrow when I've taken it with my cell phone, unedited. And that's sort of the whole point. Like this is, when I'm analyzing, I want to make sure I have it as raw as possible. Like I'm not editing my picture. I did not have this picture when it was first photographed and published online in 2009. It was a different person that owned it, and you won't find any connections if you research my life and everything that I knew anything about this in 2009 or had any connections with that guy. I have Facebook emails, I've shown different people with that guy. Like I didn't know him. He didn't know me. He's like, he didn't even, like, who are you? Are you real? Like, I scared him when I emailed him just asking, I asked for a high resolution copy of this, and then I did get the original. And so that's why I'm able to photograph it. And so, but anyway, it does kind of sweep up there, whereas this goes down. And so that's one interesting asymmetry you do see in here. And so this is not copyrighted. I mean, you can just go here and download this. Like they have a button, like go ahead and download this. There you go. Just there were a million copies of that. And so, but this is not the original of this picture. And this is a really well done website, and they do an incredible CGI of this picture. And then this is the pedestal death mask. I mean, I'm going to critique this really quickly here. They did really good. But this is a pedestal death mask where you can see that there is damage all the way midline right there. That's the hooded eyelid. That's the hooded eyelid. So when I was really analyzing this and seeing how well it looked, in 2017, And I'm going to redo my whole website, and I think I'm just going to hide but keep all of my old videos, but I only want people to see them to hear my whole story, which I've said before. And so I am going to like unlist almost all of them, but I'll just keep them on my website just so you can see I learned something more every year. And so you can see why there might be something I don't agree with now, because I'm learning and figuring stuff out. But this is not the raw version of this. I would flip this around because the heavy eyelid is on the other side. You can even see here. That's the sunken in eyelid. That's a little bit more like there's a real eyelid there. Sunken in eyelid should be there, and that nose is very thin, so that looks well with the painting, because he made his nose look really smaller. Rogers did. He took artistic liberty. And then they just totally took that collar, and a lot of liberties there. A lot of liberties. Of course, this was a little bit more raw. Artistically speaking, as an artist, I don't know why you would do so well and then create a hard edge right there. I think that's really unfortunate. Like, you could sell this. I know I'm not doing an amazing job with this, but yeah, this has been heavily edited. They did a good job, and they do show the original right there. I don't know if these are the same people who work with Silver P-Cent, but they stole some of their own analysis and everything. But it's not exactly the same. I mean, obviously they've like edited it and they decided that was green. But it's a really well done. I mean, they really use like forensic techniques, as far as me as a novice could understand, of trying to describe what he looked like. But again, this is the pedestal death mask, which I could show you many articles where they state that that's just not a good one. But this is from Silver P-Cent, which is these people. And so they kind of, I don't know if it's the same people or what, but and so this is Carter's version, and the eyes are a little bit farther apart, but you still see that eyebrow kind of comes up. That's the heavier eyelid, where you sort of see a crease or some sort of damage with the eyelid kind of coming down right there, which again, you can see in my picture. You really see that kind of coming down. And so those fine details, me as an artist, I just analyze things differently. I studied art in college. I draw faces. That is my favorite thing to do, is look at I will draw individual eyebrow hairs, which you can see on the death mask. But still, like when I was looking at all of these, I could just, the naked eye, I could see things that matched up more than the Spiritus picture. And better, especially the nose. The nose got me. But what you can clearly see is more his right eyebrow. And when I look at this, I do see that sort of baldness you see in the photo and everything, and just how this is sort of clumped up and thicker there. I think they took lard onto anything that was hair in his eyebrows to keep it from being pulled out. And you do see this kind of coming, this darkness right here, and you see that right there, just all these unique. This is very clearly an eyebrow hair. You can see some of the individual, like that's an individual eyebrow hair, that's at the same angle. It's really sharply going here, coming down. This is not a thin eyebrow. And you can see that this does pick up right there in the top. Like these are eyebrow hairs right here. And it's going all the way to his temple, like it does show here. And this is maybe just his, I don't know how his face is. I don't know, you guys. I'm just really passionate about this, but I've looked at this picture. I've looked at the death mask so many times. This is a thin eyebrow, but that's not. So anyway. And this does kind of swoop up. And you don't see that swooping up in the death mask. I mean, it very possibly, he did have damage right there, but maybe he already had damage. I don't know. Maybe someone punched in the same eye. I just don't know. But in the painting, at least we do see that eyebrow did have some asymmetry in how it was shaped and kind of coming up like that if we look at the painting. We see that. So that's all I have for today. Not to criticize other people's website and work. It's cool. it's all done. But it's, to me, it's, I'm all about the details, the fine details, because I studied fine art. Anyway, have a good day.